ơi, thầy vẫn lặng lẽ ngồi thật yên cạnh bên con trong những lần con trên bên cùng tột. Thầy đã bao giờ bỏ mặc con đâu. Thầy ơi, con đã đi tìm thầy từ muôn vạn kiếp trước. Con đã đi tìm như thế, đó là lời hẹn ước. Từ thuở nước non đang còn tuổi sơ sinh. Thầy ơi, con đã đi tìm rạng anh bình minh, hay trong đêm tối con bàng hoàng thức giấc. Con đã tìm thầy từ khi con còn là đấng, là núi là mây là cây cỏ chốn rừng thiêng. Thầy như đi tìm chốn bình yên trong những nỗi khổ đau, cùng cưng nhắn. Và rồi khi hạt mưa xuân thấm nhẹ trên vàng đất, con đã thấy thầy trong hơi thở.
Good evening, friends. And special welcome to our teacher, Mitchell Ratner. Thank you for joining us. I just wanted to say a word about that music. It was a release that the monastics offered in honor of Thich Nhat Hanh's Continuation Day. And I believe there's a whole album. Do I have that correct, Mitchell? Yeah. So that was just one that I wanted to share with you. This evening, we are so very fortunate to have Mitchell join us. I know I gave you a bit of the biography that he shared with me in the notice before we gathered. But I did want to just do a little bit reminder. I am so incredibly grateful to him as being one of the founding folks who pulled together the Love and Action Ukraine, which Indigo Sangha is very happily supporting. And yeah, that's a whole nother thing that if my mind goes there, there's a lot going on politically, which also is the topic of this evening's conversation. Mindful politics, what would Thay do? So maybe he'll also share a few words about what Thay would do with Ukraine and the challenge that they're facing as well. Thay Mitchell has been a practitioner for a very long time. I find I have a little green seed of envy in my heart. It's like, oh, I wish I knew Thay in the 90s. But how lovely that you were able to come across that teaching in the 90s and become a member of the Order of Interbeing in 93, and then become a Dharma teacher in 2001. And then in between there, you supported the startup of Stillwater Sangha in Washington, D.C. in 94. So you have been very busy with teaching and sharing the Dharma. And I was trying to think if I chose 3 words that would kind of resonate with me about my impression and my growing friendship with you. The 3 words I chose were that I thought you were incredibly kind, that and I think you're incredibly kind, that I think you're very insightful, and I also think you're super chill, that you have an ease about you, which is just so it's like coming into contact with you, it feels like you can just release and relax. And so it's really lovely to have you here tonight. And I wanted to ask, do you mind if we record this evening? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to turn the evening over to Mitchell, and he will lead us in a guided meditation and talk about some mindful politics. So Mitchell, take it away.
Mitchell bowing in. Dear Thay, dear community, dear Heather, good to be with you. In a former life, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 40 years ago, I was an applied anthropologist, and I did a study of housing among minorities and immigrants, an ethnographic study in 6 communities, and one of them was Charleston, South Carolina. So, and I remember town very well. Good to be with everyone. I'd like to do a meditation with you, and there'll be mainly silence. I'll get us started and come back with some questions about frustration, irritation, and threat, and for about the last 10 minutes. And then we'll talk more about mindful politics, what would Thay do? And So there we go. So let me invite the bell. Excuse me. Find a comfortable posture for meditation. It's nice to have an upright spine often. That's comfortable for you. It's nice to relax the shoulders, relax everything that you don't need to keep yourself upright. There are many, many ways to meditate. But in the Plum Village tradition, the basic starting point is usually awareness of the breath. Breathing in, I'm aware of breathing in. Breathing out, I am aware of breathing out. So we follow the breath from the beginning of the breath, the beginning of the breathing in, to the end of breathing in, wherever we feel it in our body. And then we know that turning around like a tide, flowing in and flowing out, it turns around and we breathe out. And then the out breath starts to fade off and the new in breath comes in. And the idea is just to be aware of the flow, the ever-changing flow. And when the mind wanders, which it will, when we are able to, we notice we've lost our object of meditation and we come back to our breath. And over time in a sitting, our mind relaxes, our body relaxes. You might find a little bit more peace. And over years of doing this, those little incremental changes add up. And if you're, for whatever reason, uncomfortable simply following the breath, we can have another object of meditation, often combining it with the breath. So you could become aware of your backbone. Just by itself, or breathing in, I'm aware of my backbone. Breathing out, I smile to my backbone, or any other part of your body. Or we could listen to sound of my voice now. And when I stop talking, the sound of traffic or barking dogs or creaks in an old house, or the sound of your own breath. And if you like, you can listen, be aware of the flow of feelings and emotions through you, simply as you sit. So I'll be quiet for about 10 minutes, then come back with some questions relevant to tonight. So have a good Breathing in, I'm aware of breathing in. Breathing out, I am aware of breathing out. So into this quiet container you've created, I want to drop a couple of questions and just see what comes to mind, see what arises by itself. It's no right or wrong answer. It's not analysis. It's just having a conversation with your memories and your storehouse consciousness. And the first question was, in the family you grew up in, let's say from the time you were 5 to 15, how did your family deal with frustration, irritation, and threat? What were the common patterns? Often there's anger and yelling and demonizing in some ways. People are free with their anger. Sometimes it's ever present, sometimes it bursts out and quiets down. In other families, it's dominated by certain passivity, withdrawal, not noticing, perhaps some passive aggression. Sometimes there's other models. In my family, it was parents could get angry, but the children couldn't. So just reflect back. What was your family like? How do you remember it? You can just hold the question. You've answered it quickly. You can just see what else arises. See what other memories, what other associations come up for you. Mitchell bowing in again. We don't have much time, so I'm moving quickly. So we have to drop that question, let it go. And there's a new question I want to put into your calm container, which is now as an adult, however old we are. What have you learned about responding to frustration, irritation, and threat? What have you learned? What are you learning now? And just see what arises. No right answer. See if some moments arise in your memory. So begin to close up your self-exploration in about 20 seconds. I'll invite the bell to close our sitting. So Heather, should I just go right into my presentation, or are you doing something before then? Well, I think we should take a minute to stretch and move a little, however feels good for you. Mitchell bowing in again. Hmm. Lovely being with you. Heather and I did a swap, I think 2 months or so ago. Heather came to the online to the Stillwater Mindfulness Practice Center on a Thursday evening and gave a lovely presentation, and she asked me to come back. And it's really a delight to practice with other sanghas, because you get a new look at what you usually do. So as Heather mentioned, I had the good fortune to meet Thay in 1990. Started practicing in a Thich Nhat Hanh Sangha in 1989. And I was captivated by him from the first time I met him. Give a talk at a big conference called the Common Boundary between psychotherapy and spirituality, which used to be a group, and they had a conference every year here in the Washington area. And he spoke to about 2,000 people there. And very quietly, and had such presence that everyone felt he was talking to them, and they were right with him. And what amazed me is, for an hour and a half that he talked, nobody coughed. I mean, they were so intense into this, and it was just lovely. And early on, I realized that Thay's teachings and his life and his practice were sort of key that fit the lock in my life and the way, my aspirations, my difficulties, my craziness. It was a key that really worked with all that. So I became very active and went to Plum Village in France a number of times in the 90s. And then, to my surprise, in 2001, that I got a fax from Plum Village asking me to come in December and receive the lamp and become a Dharma teacher. And so I did. And spent some time trying to figure out what to do with it. And how do I feel comfortable with it? Because I clearly didn't have the experience or the presence of Thay, but I did know some things. And how to teach in a way that felt comfortable to me. And somehow, I came across a quote from a poet named Theodore Roethke, who used to teach at the University of Wisconsin. And his quote was, "A teacher is someone who carries on their education in public." And that sounded about right to me, that I could talk about the things that I was working with and in public, and then bring people along and then get their help to figure out what I hadn't said or what other perspective works well. So that's what I tend to do, and that's what we'll do tonight. Early on in when I started teaching a 6-week intro class called Smiling Like a Buddha. And a lot of it had to do with anger, dealing with anger. And it was that little thing I did for the guided meditation. We used to do that. I mean, just sort of talk about our histories. And I realized that I and most Americans, most people in the world grew up with basically two responses: frustration, irritation, and threat. One was anger, yelling, striking out, demonizing. And the other was passivity, withdrawal, pretending not to notice, often some passive aggression or depression going along with that. And only as an adult, and especially with the practice, did I understand that there are other options. That one, for example, could be strong, firm, loving, all at the same time. And then more recently, I realized that with an election, high political drama, like the one that is now occurring, well, everyone, but especially mindfulness practitioners, often have the same basic options. Some of us feel alienated and pull back and say, I don't want to be part of this ugliness, this anger. And some of us are caught by propaganda and fear, which leads us to belittle and demonize the other side, to be judgmental. And some of us look for other options. So that's how I got started on this. What other options are there for mindfulness practitioners? Thay has a phrase that I really like. He talks about practitioners as being aspiring bodhisattvas. So what can we do? What would Thay do? And as I started in on this, I realized that the war in Vietnam had a lot to do with Thay's life, the ongoing series of wars, and that in the 1960s, and his position was not to support or be supported by either the communists in the North or the dictatorship in the South. Famously, when he was asked whether he was from the North or the South, he replied, "I'm from the center." And his response was to really work tirelessly to end the horrendous suffering, especially this suffering caused by the escalation of the war fueled by outsiders, by outside countries, and to create a spiritually based alternative to the ends justify the means ideology of politicians on both sides in Vietnam. And so in 1966, he included, in the midst of the war, he included in one of the 14 mindfulness trainings this guidance. And I'm going to put up some slides. There's 9 of them here. And I'm going to ask somebody just to bow in and read them as we go along. So just, if you would like to read, or if it's a pause, just bow in and read the slide. And then I'll come to the, either that slide will continue and somebody else will read it, or I'll stop for a second and say a little bit more. So let's see if I have to turn on my slides. Can you see that? Good. Okay. So would somebody like to read this half of the 10th mindfulness training?
Lid bowing in. Aware that the essence and aim of a Sangha is the practice of understanding and compassion, we're determined not to use the Buddhist community for personal power or profit, or transform our community into a political instrument. As members of a spiritual community, we should nonetheless take a clear stand against oppression and injustice. We should strive to change the situation without taking sides in a conflict.
Thank you, Lynn. I'm gonna flip back and forth. So that's a lot of people pick up on the not taking sides in a conflict and not transform our community into a political instrument to say we should be removed from politics. We should not take sides even in an election. I mean, that's what I often hear from people. I got interested in this phrase, not taking sides, and I wanted to understand more what Thay meant by it. So I started looking for other places that he said that or something similar. Would somebody read this, please?
Deborah bowing in. Zen and the art of saving the planet, not taking sides. Speaking out for peace, we did not take sides. It was very difficult, very dangerous to take such a stand. When you take a side, at least you're protected by one side. But if you don't take sides, you're exposed to destruction by both. And so it's very difficult. And in those conditions, we struggled for peace and engaged in a social work in the spirit of nonviolence and non-discrimination. It was very hard. It was in such a situation that our School of Youth for Social Service was misunderstood by both sides. Deborah bowing out.
It's a lovely little section in Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet, where Thay is reflecting on not taking sides and just you could understand that in the two sides are a dictatorship, two forms of dictatorship in a sense, or that he really could not see being part of that. But not taking sides, I got into what's underneath that. So let's go on to the next little quote. A reader, please.
Andrea bowing in. The sun, my heart. Reconciliation does not mean to sign an agreement with duplicity and cruelty. Reconciliation opposes all forms of ambition without taking sides. Most of us want to take sides in each encounter or conflict. We distinguish right from wrong based on partial evidence gathered directly or by propaganda or hearsay. We need indignation in order to act, but indignation alone is not enough, even righteous, legitimate indignation. Our world does not lack people willing to throw themselves into action. What we need are people who are capable of loving, of not taking sides so that they can embrace the whole of reality as a mother hen embraces all her chicks with two fully spread wings. Andrea bowing out.
Thank you very much. So just to let you know, the titles at the top are the book they come from. So Thay talks about not taking sides, not, links it to a notion of unconditional love. Here's another somewhat similar quote from Peace is Every Step. Peace is every breath.
Anne bowing in. Peace in every breath. Equanimity means not drawing lines, not taking sides, not discriminating, not rejecting, True love has to be like that, not discriminating based on skin color, race, or religion, not excluding anyone. This is the highest love, the love that can embrace every human and every living thing. It is the love of Buddha. When we love in this way, we see no boundary between the lover and the one who is loved. And we and our beloved are not separate entities with equanimity. Our love becomes truly boundless love. And bowing out.
Mm. So not taking sides, I mean, is the love of the bodhisattvas. This great open-heartedness. And I think what happened, this is in a lot of writings from Thay, from, coming out of the war and afterwards. But after some times in the West, living in the US, living in France, occasionally he would actually talk about politics. And so here's the question is, what would Thay do? How did Thay respond to situations when the choices were not between two forms of dictatorships, but when there was a chance for people to express themselves through their votes? And there's 2 slides from a book called Good Citizens, Creating an Enlightened Society.
John bowing in. Good citizens creating an enlightened society. Our Congress, like a family or a community, should itself promote peaceful engagement with its members. When we elect people to Congress, we invest our hope and trust in them and expect them to listen to other members. All members of Congress should have the capacity to listen, to realize what is good, intelligent, and valuable. Too often they are not listening to their colleagues. They are listening just to their own ideas or thinking about how they are going to disagree and argue as soon as the other person from the other party stops talking. We do not elect representatives to Congress only to fight. I personally would like to vote for representatives who have the capacity to listen and speak mindfully. I think we all might want to write our senators and representatives to recommend that they consider practicing deep listening and loving speech. We could suggest that in the Senate and the House of Representatives, there be a committee on compassionate listening and speech. We must wake up and put our awakenings into practice, asking for action when we elect members to Congress.
Thank you very much. In another book called Work, How to Find Joy and Meaning in Each Hour of the Day, Thay goes on to suggest that everyone and anyone, even politicians, can approach their work and daily life as a spiritual practice. A reader, please.
Janaki bowing in. From Work, How to Find Joy and Meaning in Each Hour of the Day by Thich Nhat Hanh. A mindful politician can also act according to his conscious and independent insight. He's capable of voting mindfully, possibly at odds with his own party. By showing honesty and goodwill, other members of his party will understand him and he'll enjoy the support of the people. So it's very important to bring the dimension of practice, a spiritual dimension, into your work. We need people like that in our world.
Thank you. So what Thay is offering, as I understand, is that political and social engagement can be a spiritual path. There was a real interesting book put together in 2006 called Mindful Politics, a Buddhist guide to making the world a better place. And it included 34 different Buddhist authors, including Thay, writing about mindful politics. And many of the contributors note that their approach to social action comes from their understanding of no self. That when we look deeply, we realize we are, in the words of Martin Luther King, caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And I especially appreciated an essay in that book by a then teacher and activist from the Bay Area named Alan Sinoki. And this is our final quote.
Nancy bowing in. From Nowhere to Spit by Alan Sinoki in Mindful Politics. The notion of enlightened politics points to two facts of life. First, all beings yearn for freedom and happiness. Second, we live in communities, nations, cultures, and global environments that bind our well-being to the well-being of others. This is what Thich Nhat Hanh calls interbeing. It means that not only must we think globally and act locally, but we must also think locally and act globally. The notion of enlightened politics brings to mind an old Zen saying, quote, "There's no place in the world to spit." There is no place we can ignore, defile, or bomb because we ourselves are everywhere.
And if you would continue.
Enlightened view means, as Suzuki Roshi puts it, seeing things as it is. So we turn back to the real world where political realities, in fact, all realities, are impermanent and incomplete. This means compromise, working for and voting for candidates who will do the least harm. Who intends to end the downward spiral of war in the Middle East? Who intends to redirect our economy from military spending to education and healthcare? Who will admit that America's way in the world has been a path of arrogance and power and intends to go another way in faith that Dharma will flourish? That candidate will have my vote.
Thank you for all the readers. So, Heather, can I turn to Dharma sharing now?
Sounds wonderful.
So my question is, do you believe politics and votings can be a spiritual practice and an expression of true love?